Hello, everyone. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the purpose of groups and how to kind of define as one of the leader of groups, how to define those purposes for yourself and to help group members also with that purpose planning. And then also I'll be talking about planning, how to go about planning the big picture plans for sessions as well as some of the more micro level. All right, so I'm not covering like extensive topics here, but just maybe a few key concepts to be considering. So we'll start with the purpose of groups. And once again, drawing the information from the group counseling strategies and skills, ninth edition. All right, so there's a couple quotes on page 61 of this text that I wanted to highlight. So number one, it says the purpose of the group serves as a map for the leader. And then also being clear about the purpose of the group is perhaps the most important group leadership concept to learn. So once again, if we don't know where we're going with the group, then the group members aren't either, most likely. So we need that inner map, that inner guide inside of ourselves to kind of know, even if the group is like pretty loose and flexible and we don't have like specific plans for every tiny little section of the group. Like there's certain groups where it makes sense not to be like rigidly planned of every tiny little second, but we are still like need to be remembering, okay, what's the core purpose of this group, and am I maintaining that cohesion between sessions that are aiming towards that purpose. So once again, do we have that conceptual map inside of ourselves is an important question to consider. I felt like the text gave some pretty good examples of the importance and need of having the purpose for clear for groups on pages 62 and 63, but one I kind of departed from a little bit. So there's one example where it's talking about a group that's transitioning to middle school. So students who are in elementary school transitioning to middle school. And I'll just read a few key details here. So it's the second section or second session. The members are talking about their fears of transitioning to middle school. Some are talking about the fears of changing classes. Uh, and then if it says when the leader asks if other students share the same fear, Miles jumps in and starts to talk about how he is afraid of the dark sometimes. The leader asks members if they are afraid of the dark. Javon says he is a little. The group then discusses fear of the dark for the rest of the session. And then the authors kind of go on to say, like, the group deviated from the purpose of the group, that they're not really talking about transitioning to middle school anymore. And I can see that. Sure, the content isn't specifically related to transitioning to middle school, but I just wanted to like share this example to invite you to think about that we don't have to have like a rigid, like exact clarity of like, oh, we're not saying the right words, so we're not following the purpose. Like maybe being afraid of the dark is a metaphor for this student. Maybe it feels like they're in the dark, that they don't know what middle school is like. So it's as if like, okay, the lights are on in elementary school because I've experienced that. I know what to expect, but it's as if the lights are about to be turned off and I'm going to be in the dark because I don't know where I'm going. I don't know who I'm going to see there. I don't know the teachers. I don't know the school. I don't know the different rooms that I'll be changing to. So I see like that fear of the dark as actually maybe a metaphoric way. The students probably aren't thinking about that cognitively, but I think that's a way that maybe this student Miles and Javon, like they're both afraid of the dark. They're afraid of this dark transition in their life. So just something to be thoughtful of. That's yeah, just sometimes I just kind of in groups I kind of roll with things for a little bit to see how it plays out. It's not like I jump on something right away of saying, "Oh, that's not part of the purpose of this group." Sometimes like if it's something like way in left field that it's like clearly inappropriate and it's like I don't know where it's clear that you're not in the right phase. Sure, we might need to cut that off early, but periodically it's like, there might be something there might not be. So we can kind of choose as leaders if we want to cut it off early or have that openness to see how it plays out. So yeah, in some ways, I feel like these authors are kind of on the side of the continuum of like open to seeing how things play out, or kind of like following a more clear structure. I think they're on this side of the continuum of following a clear structure. They say some lines about being flexible, but I think I'm kind of one of the type of leaders who's more flexible and open to kind of deviating. Maybe it's not going to be following the purpose, but it could be in an important way. So if it could be, I sometimes go to that space for a while. So just some things to be considering. All right. This kind of goes along as well. Like on page 64, it's talking about determining the purpose of the group. And my thought there was like, who defines that? I think it's ultimately the leader's responsibility to be, ensuring that there's a clear purpose, that it's clearly relevant and meaningful for the group. But I'm not sure that it's like 100% responsibility just on the leader. I don't believe that. So, for example, the text says on page 64, sometimes it is the leader who determines exactly what is to happen in the group. This is true for such groups as like a task group. Other times it is the members who have much to say about the purpose. So it's once again like so for Adams State University students who are going to group labs, I think a lot of it is on the members, that it's not the leaders who are saying, hey, we must talk about this. It's more of an interpersonal process and a growth type group. So it's like helping the group decide what is our purpose here? What do we want to get out of this? What maybe core theme is the unifying element of this group? Uh, so sometimes it's a really meaningful thing to have like a group of individuals come together to come to a consensus of the purpose of the group. Like once again, so for certain types of groups, that's not relevant. That's not needed. It is the leader who is defining, like, especially maybe psychoeducational groups that are on a specific topic that they're more of the expert and they need to teach some skills. But sometimes it is going to be the members. So once again, I just wanted to open up space for that continuum again. Like for some reason, a lot of continuums came to mind as I was thinking about this because I almost felt like the authors were maybe a little bit more trying to make things a bit more clear cut than I personally feel they are. So I think it is more of a continuum of like, we're going to be kind of vacillating between more structure or more flexibility, is it the leader responsibility to be the lead or, defining the purpose or the members? And I think it's often in between. It's not just an either or. All right. I did connect with the authors in saying that, we need to have, especially as leaders, that there's a clear purpose for each session. So we need to have that clarity of purpose. That doesn't mean though that there's rigid structure necessarily. Sometimes there needs to be a lot of structure, but sometimes it is like for interpersonal process groups or, you know, like I just shared the examples of group labs for Adams State students, it can be pretty undefined. It's like, okay, we're facilitating key skills that are going to help members to become more honest with each other, to try out new ways of relating to their peers, to share more openly with groups when maybe they haven't in the past. So like sometimes the purpose can be a bit more nebulous, and it's like a play it out, see how it plays out type dynamic. Uh, but yeah, but we ultimately need that larger vision though of like, where's this going though? What is the larger unifying theme? All right. I want to jump to another page real quick. So the authors say that not having a purpose for the session is inadvisable. So which makes sense. We need to have that larger purpose as I've defined it. Like if we're just like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what like the purpose is. Yeah, that's a problem. But they also then go on to say, although you may choose to bring together a group of people who have no predetermined goal in mind, the purpose of the first meeting should be to decide what the purpose should be for the remainder of the meetings. So once again, it could be that we're gonna like almost like just like a seed sprouting. Like we have this seed of like, okay, we're coming for some purpose that isn't clear yet, but we need to like sprout this seed of like, what does this specific group want to bloom into, want to flower into? So the members can be at times part of the purpose planning and purpose definition for the group experience. So I'll pause there with chapter 3 on the purpose of groups. Those are some of the key thoughts that I wanted to share, but I'm going to jump to chapter 4. So I just wrote down a few questions. I'm going to hold to it. So when you're planning a group, I think it's important to just before getting into the nuances of the group, I think it's important for you to pause and think about, okay, what are my beliefs about groups first? Because those are going to inform how I plan and what I plan. So for example, a few questions that weren't in the text, but I wrote down when thinking about this chapter and this topic of planning in groups is what are your beliefs about groups? So how does healing or growth occur in groups? Maybe some of you who are newer to groups or haven't been a part of a group or haven't led any yet, you're going to have no idea. Or like, I think you probably do have more experiences with groups than you think. Like, it's not just counseling groups that we're talking about. You've been a part of a group. Uh, Sometimes it's part of our task is to translate those outside group experiences to like groups in general behave in certain ways. So like how do groups in general move towards thriving? What are the conditions that are needed in order to do that, to facilitate that type of growth and healing? What are the conditions that lead to the opposite of that, to negative beliefs, negative experiences? So another question to consider is, who is responsible for change? Is it the leader who helps facilitate change as the primary change agent, or is it the members, or anywhere in between, or is it a shared responsibility, or who is, once again, a continuum or a scale? Uh, you likely all have beliefs on that, even if you haven't thought about them clearly, but there's likely these inherent beliefs that you have that maybe haven't, that are pre-reflective, that you need to think about. You need to think about these types of questions. So once again, who is responsible for change? Uh, so once again, I believe that the leader absolutely does have a part in that change, but it's a partnership with the members. But how does the leader then facilitate towards growth and healing? What is their role? So some of these questions are going to be covered in later chapters and later videos, but I wanted to pose them now just to get you thinking about, like, okay, this is going to impact how I choose to plan. It's going to impact how I'm choosing to structure and get ready for these sessions of my inner belief system. So you all need to be thinking about that, of like, what are my beliefs? And those will hopefully will continue to emerge in an inductive way throughout these videos and in this class that you're taking. Okay, so with that being said, I want to jump to page 82. So big picture planning. So when you're planning a group, kind of like with the purpose, you need to be thinking about, okay, so what's the big picture planning, the macro level planning. I like some of the examples that the authors pose here, like for an anger management group. It's not saying here's exactly what we're going to be doing, the exact like skills or interventions we're gonna bring up. All right, there was a brief, someone, it came from my family, so I had to pause real quick. So getting back to the video. All right, so back to the anger management group. So on page 82, I really like how, like I was just saying, it's not giving it the exact structure of here's what you're going to do during this minute of the group. It's just talking about what's the larger, bigger picture plans that we have. Like, what are the larger topics that might be relevant for an anger management group. So some of them are talking about different theories of anger, uh, talking about current anger, past anger, anger at siblings, anger as a habit, anger as a cover up for deeper emotions, etc. So a lot of these might be relevant. And then talks about a divorce group. And now a divorce group, it might be important to talk about children. It might be important to talk about remarriage, sex, dating, guilt, hurt, blame, etc. There's a lot of different topics that might be relevant and important. So an important part of, like, before the group even starts, is to be thinking about the big picture planning. And I really see, as at least for the Adams State students who are watching this video, that big picture planning is starting through this course. You're starting to think about groups in general, but then also I'll try to make in these videos like some consistent thoughts just to be thinking about in preparation for group counseling labs. So you can be thinking of the big picture. And like, I really see you as already planning and preparing for that group experience by being in this course. Uh, so yeah, I think that's really important. And I tried, like in the previous, when I was talking about chapter 3 there, that a lot of, group labs is much more of an interpersonal process growth group, where we don't have to have like a rigid, clarity of purpose from the get-go. That's defined by the group, and we need to use the facilitative skills as leaders to help the group come to that consensus and idea. Okay, but with that being said, now I'm going to kind of jump to the other side of this big picture planning, to the micro level planning on pages, what is it, 88? Yeah, 88 through 91. It gives some pretty good like sample session plans. They go into a lot of detail of just saying, for the first 3 minutes, we're covering this, just introductions, doing a round of everyone's names, ages of children, for this example, why they came to the group, keeping it really brief as well. Then it goes through like the specific plans for all of the minutes that they add up to the 60-minute or 90-minute or whatever the group is. So look through some of those examples and kind of see some ideas of group plans that they can be very structured. that we need to have, an idea of like, how are we introducing the group for that specific group session? What's the middle phase look like, that workings phase? And then how are we wrapping up and ending the group? So wherever you're at, like some of you are going to be very much like, hey, I like to be precise. I like to have like a clear plan and clear structure going into something. And some are like, hey, I like to wing it and see how things play out. So creating sample plans might be a push for both sides of that continuum. If you're like a lot of structure, sometimes you need to build in flexibility. And like, the topic might be irrelevant this week. Maybe something big is just brought in by the member and it's really relevant. And we need to change gears and just go a completely different direction than we planned. And that's often okay and needed. But if we're like super like, hey, we'll just wing it, not sometimes that doesn't work out because the group isn't really, they don't find traction right away. So we need to have some ideas of how to help them find the traction. So we need to have some plans in play for those three phases of the group, of intro, middle phase, and ending phase. Uh, yeah, overall, I think all group leaders need to be flexible, and they speak to that in the textbook on page 92. I think that was really important. There's a section on planning too much. Sometimes we can over plan, and like that rigidity gets in the way. Or we plan like content that isn't meaningful, that the group members don't feel is relevant. So you know, we need to be able to move away from plans when they're not working out. On page 92, I couldn't help but laugh because it said, unfortunately, some professionals still subscribe to the notion that planning detracts from the group. And I was like, I wrote in the book, like, in a way, I'm kind of one of those. So maybe I deviate from these authors a little bit. Uh, I'm not saying that planning detracts completely from groups, but I think over planning and being rigid and inflexible is a detraction from the group. So a lot of times, like, I guess I have to own my bias as a group leader, and we all need to recognize our biases. It's not necessarily bad, but like our beliefs about groups are important to recognize. Like I believe in members, like too, and that's influenced by the theory, like counseling theory that I work with, which I'll talk about in other videos. That we really need, like, I believe in the members to take a lot of responsibility in the group. That it's not all just me as the leader. I'll take my responsibility, and like I have responsibility. Like I am the trained professional in that environment. So it is on me in a lot of ways, but it's not like I'm taking ownership for each member though, for their experience in the group. That's theirs. So I see it as a shared partnership. All right. Yeah, and once again, they also talk about, I guess going back to lack of flexibility. They talk about that on page 94. So it's necessary to be flexible and deviate from a plan whenever it becomes clear that members are not benefiting from it. I like that line from the text because it makes it clear. Like we ultimately need to be thinking about what is the group getting from this? Are they getting their needs met? So let's see. The last thing that I wanted to talk about just briefly is that when talking about the planning is that sometimes these authors talk about that like we need as group leaders to make sure that the content is interesting and energizing to the group members. I'm not sure what I think of that, honestly. So back on page 85, one specific section was planning for the energy level for the beginning phase. I think that's important to be thoughtful of. Like members, one session might be super energized and be ready to roll, and other sessions they might be kind of slower and not have like traction to get going. So you know, I think that's important. But sometimes I read these author statements, or at least I interpreted them. Maybe I didn't interpret them fairly, but it seems like they're saying that the energies level of the leader, like they need to guide the energy level. Sometimes we influence it, but I don't think we create the energy level for member or for group members. So once again, whose responsibility is it for the energy level and the momentum of the group? I think it's a partnership. But some of you might say, hey, you know what? It's more of the responsibility of the leader. Some of you might feel like, hey, it's more the responsibility of the members, that I'm not going to be the one to jolt them into energy, that they need to find that internally. Like there's this continuum. So once again, wrestle with these things, chew on these things, think about them, and maybe just the context of the group is going to influence that continuum as well. Like if something's a task group that we need to get something done, maybe even like a school project group. Yeah, like maybe the group leader is the one who needs to kind of jolt some momentum. But a lot of counseling groups and growth groups aren't going to be, on the leader. So once again, things to think about. So yeah, if there's any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to connect.